Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member from Regina Capel.
After 9 years of this Liberal-NDP Prime Minister, it's clear he's not worth the cost, the crime, the corruption, or chaos. The Liberal caucus is revolting. Because even in one-safe Liberal seats, voters are angry. They're angry that the Prime Minister raised their prices and devalued their paychecks with his inflation. They're angry that their grocery and home heating costs keep going up because of his carbon tax, and they're angry that their cars keep getting stolen, their parks are full of dirty needles, and homeless encampments now line their streets. So will the Prime Minister put an end to the anger, spread some much-needed joy, and call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide?
The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
We know that Canadians have had a tough couple of years as a result of the rising cost of living and global inflation, but Canadian households are right to ask who is actually fighting for them. I can tell you it's not Conservative caucus members who don't want to forgive interest on student loans. It's not the Conservative leader who wants to take away the Canada Child benefit, and if you don't believe me, look at his voting record. It's not the Conservative caucus members who want to make sure that Canadian women don't have access to free birth control. Mr. Speaker, in the next election, people are going to ask themselves, do they want a Liberal government who cares about them or a Conservative leader who cares about himself?
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
It hasn't been a tough couple of years, Mr. Speaker. It's been a tough 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister. And now taxes are up, costs are up, crime's up, and time's up. It's not just Conservatives saying that, it's Liberal MPs too. You see, they can't do it anymore. They can't convince voters that taxes are going down when in fact they're going up. They can't convince their voters that home prices are becoming more affordable when they keep getting more expensive. And they can't convince their voters that crime is down when it just keeps getting worse. So now they're trying to convince the Prime Minister to resign. But since he won't, will he do the next best thing and call a carbon tax election so Canadians can decide?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to share some facts, if I might. I stand here as the Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth, and I wonder if this ministry will even exist if Conservatives were to gain power. Here are the facts. Conservatives will cut services to survivors of gender-based violence. They'll cut critical supports for women entrepreneurs. They'll cut life-saving support for grassroots organizations. They will cut pharmacare and contraceptives for women. We on this side of the House stand for women and gender-diverse people. They do not. Straight facts, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
That is baseless and false. We're going to cut the carbon tax, eliminate it, and defund the CBC and put that savings back in taxpayers' pockets. But consider where we are. It's actually kind of amazing. Liberal MPs are so frustrated that they're not allowed to speak in caucus, they're actually confiding in Conservatives. They have to sneak out to the bathroom to have therapy text sessions with journalists, and cabinet ministers call their own colleagues garbage because they're speaking out against the Prime Minister's terrible record. He's losing control, he's losing confidence, he lost the plot a long time ago, so for the love of all that's holy, will he finally call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for...
Leader of the opposition, the leader of the Conservatives would do if he was the Prime Minister, he would cut things like the Canada Summer Jobs Program, Mr. Speaker, something that exists in every one of our communities that is so important to employers and so important to kids. Mr. Speaker, do you think that we would be able to maintain our progress on clean water? He would cut funding to First Nations dependent on a real and fair, equitable solution.
Perhaps we'll take just a quick second so that people can reflect on the fact that you must not take the floor if you have not been recognised by the Speaker.
That you should not be speaking unless you're recognised by the Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, why the Prime Minister was all smiles yesterday when he left his chaotic caucus where 24 MPs called for his departure? It's simple, because the Prime Minister knows he can count on the support of the 32 Bloc Québécois MPs down there to keep him in office. The Bloc supported this Prime Minister despite the fact that he doubled the cost of housing, he inflated the cost of food, he caused a rise in violent crime and created the worst immigration crisis in Canadian history. Will the Prime Minister take a look behind him, hear the message from his backbenchers and Quebecers, and call an election now? The Honourable Minister for Fisheries and Oceans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Listen. The sheer hypocrisy of the Conservative Party is eminently clear. Let us not forget that the leader of the Conservative government at the time removed benefits for diabetics. Since then, they've voted against free pharmacare for people living with diabetes. We see the Conservatives are all about doublespeak. That's all they're about. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Well, the Minister should perhaps go round her caucus and notice that 24 of her MPs have come out to demand the Prime Minister's departure. Just this week, a Prime Minister that's doubled national debt, mortgage prices that has allowed criminality to explode. The Prime Minister's incompetence, Mr. Speaker, has led to an alarm bell being rang in amongst his own partisans who are calling for a change of leadership. He even sent one of his ministers to say that opponents within his party, his own MPs, are garbage. The Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost, nor the insults. When is he going to drop the writ? The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let us talk about housing and incompetence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Mr. Speaker. 6 affordable housing units. That's all the Conservative leader was able to do when he was housing minister throughout the country. He can't even find where these 6 are. He's trying to figure out where he can go to find them. Did someone perhaps build something that he could appropriate? No. Only 6 housing units. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack, Mr. Speaker.